Welcome to the Trump Tariffs webinar, part 2, hosted by Casas International and the Scissor Group. My name is Joe Lawrence. I'm the Vice President here at Casas International. It's our privilege and pleasure to provide you with information on how you can use Section 321 e-commerce and 9802 assembly programs in case the illegal immigration crisis isn't significantly improved in the next 45 days and Trump tariffs are reinstated. We're hopeful that the tariffs won't go into effect next month, but we must all remain prudent in our approach. Nevertheless, during this period of time and uncertainty, you can always count on us to help you. Se puede confiar en Casas. You can trust us. Now I'd like to turn over the webinar to Mirna.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again. I'm here accompanied by Juan Moreno from the Scissor Group.
Good morning, everyone.
I will open up with, we dodged a bullet, but the gun is still loaded.
Very true.
Last Friday, the United States agreed to suspend the 5% tariff on goods imported into the United States from Mexico. So both governments will meet again in 45 days to determine whether the measures taken by Mexico are effectively reducing the illegal immigration crisis. Otherwise, the tariffs will be reinstated.
Yes, very important that we do acknowledge that, because one of the big mysteries that's still on the table is really what is the U.S. government really wanting to see as far as actions being taken by Mexico. There's been rumors about strengthening the southern border, pulling a very, very prominent military presence, to other discussions that lead to Mexico keeping a lot of the asylum seekers within their own country, which obviously has not set well with Mexico. So the general public is a little bit upset about some of the concessions that were made. So it's still a very volatile issue, nevertheless. And like Marina pointed out, the gun is still loaded. We know Mr. Trump can change his mind at any given moment. So we just need to be on this issue and monitor it very closely.
I will encourage everyone, if you don't have a Twitter account, you need to have one, and you need to follow the President of the United States. He was already tweeting, letting us know that if we are not satisfied in the United States by the actions that Mexico is taking to address the immigration crisis with Central America and other countries, that he will reinstate these 5% tariffs that he's proposed to start as soon as 45 days from Friday. So given that, this is why we continued with this effort of presenting to you two options. That is Section 321 and the foreign assemblers of U.S. components goods in Mexico. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. E-commerce. A Section 321 entry is an informal type of entry that clears goods if they're valued at less than $800 US dollars sales value at the time of entry. The shipment is covered by a single order or contract. So pretty much what that means is what you and I and everyone orders on Amazon.
That's right. Single user, single recipient in the United States. You're absolutely right, yes.
It can't be consolidated with multiple shipments. So my orders can't be, if I made 7 orders on Amazon, they cannot be consolidated to one and exceed $800. Shipments are sent to one individual or company per day. E-commerce is not exclusive to consumers. Maquiladoras, national vendors in Mexico or any country can use this section. How that is done is that it's manifested separately via the e-manifest portal, and it's controlled by shipment control numbers, pretty much what we do every day now. Shipment control numbers are prepared at the time of entry, and they're manifested to the port so that CBP can see the shipment prior to its arrival into the United States. So Section 321s are beneficial to importers because they reduce the amount of paperwork for low-value goods and allow faster clearance processing. But in addition, Juan.
In addition, the more important part of all this is that really you're exempt from any tariffs. Duties, tariffs, fees are not applicable if you meet the criteria for a 321 importation.
So most e-commerce goods that do not exceed the value can be released as a Section 321 with these 4 exceptions. Goods requiring inspection before release, regardless of value. Anti-dumping and countervailing commodities, quota class goods, goods regulated by Food and Drug Administration, the Food Safety Inspection, National Highway Transportation and Safety Administration, Consumer Products and Safety Commission, and United States Department of Agriculture.
There are other government agencies where it's highly advisable that if you do trigger any of the other ones not mentioned, that you verify first with U.S. Customs in your 321 importation. We've had situations where, for example, product has been subject to certain other requirements and they've allowed it. And in some cases, they've not.
Because this is a conduit for a lot of illicit activity, and those that are not compliant would try to use this to introduce other types of products that are not allowed into the United States. One other thing that I like to mention about Section 321 is no classification.
That's right.
No country of origin.
That's right.
No reconciliation.
Mm-hmm.
No trade compliance post-summary entry.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So it pretty much lives and dies the minute it comes into the United States.
Yes.
And we're here to support your companies in this effort if this is what makes you stay viable, profitable, and continue to grow your operations.
Yeah, and one thing to mention, guys, even though you might think that you can't take advantage entirely of this criteria or of this option for your operation, there might be parts of your business that you are able to segregate and say, okay, for this imports that we're doing to the US, those we can do 321 and keep the rest like you're doing before. Try to see if you can take any advantage at all, not just throw it out the window because it's either too hard, too complicated, or just affects your way of currently doing business.
And I'd like to mention that you can combine on one single truck or conveyance
Yes. Mm-hmm.
your normal formal entries
Mhm.
with Section 321
Yeah, exactly. You
claims.
don't have to have a specific truck or transportation unit specifically assigned for 321 versus your regular shipments. You can have everything in a single container and meet both criteria.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The 9802 program, the Foreign Assembly of U.S. Goods Abroad. I like to say, Juan, that it resuscitated with a lot of
Definitely.
potential.
Oh my God, yes. Especially after the threat with Mexico. That program all of a sudden became more viable and more relevant than it was before. Like you've mentioned before, Myrna, 9802 was a very, very popular program prior to NAFTA. It was your way of reducing your overall impact on the total value that was being reported to customs. But again, you had to meet very specific criteria.
The provision of 90 permits a reduction in duty allowance for the value of components manufactured in the United States and assembled abroad. They can be assembled anywhere in the world. It allows an article entered under this provision is subject to a duty upon full value of the imported assembly less the cost of the value of the U.S. components. This was a viable option to allow your companies to save on paying the tariff. And that was strictly based on our presumption of how CBP has in the past interpreted through the Chinese tariff that allowed U.S. goods assembled abroad to be apply for this program and not be subject to the full value of the Chinese tariffs. To give you an idea of what is allowed, what is a partial duty exemption for articles assembled abroad. So it's taking whole or part of a fabricated component that is origin U.S.
Yes.
and taking it abroad, exported in the condition ready to assemble without further fabrication.
Key.
Key.
That is key right there.
Will not lose its physical identity by change in form, shape, or otherwise, and have not been advanced in value or improved in condition abroad except by being assembled and except by operations incidental to the assembly process, such as cleaning, lubricating, in order to protect your claim of the assembly program.
Very important that you acknowledge the first part of that, which is the exported in a condition ready for assembly. I know that is a statement that can be a little bit subjective as far as what does U.S. Customs really mean by that. For example, you can't ship a U.S. origin resin into Mexico, convert it into a plastic housing that is then eventually made into a connector to a housing. That component, the resin, was not exported in a condition ready for assembly. So you need to have that condition present in order for you to be able to take advantage of that. And the other thing that I want to mention here is that we only advise that you do take advantage of this program if the savings realized are meaningful. Unless you're really going to save what for you is significant, I would not venture down the road of claiming this program. Remember, anytime you claim a special program, you're incurring risk. You need to prove that you're eligible for this program. Obviously, what does that mean? It means that you need to have certain documentation in order to defend that you're eligible for this program. So unless the savings realized is significant, do not use this program.
I will say this, Customs has rulings out there that already have set precedents on what are allowed. So your scenario may not be very specific, but we also have those preset decisions that were going to guide us through all of this. If you have leisure time, go through the cross system, put in an assembly program or 98020080 in there, and you will find volumes of interpretations of what can be claimed or not claimed under the assembly program.
As an example of how the impact works, you've got an item classified under 9018-001020, which is dutable at 10%. The total cost that would be reported to Customs would be $10. The value of US components within the 10 is 3. So what you'd be able to do here is be able to allocate those $3 under the 9802 classification, which would make it exempt from duty, and the other $7 would remain on the classification line and subject to both the general duty rate and any other possible additional tariff. So in this case, you're saving $3 over the total. So like I said, unless that savings is significant, do this type of analysis first. If it's enough for you to warrant going down this path, then definitely take advantage of this.
And Customs can guide you through the process of how to set up your future invoices so that you are able to itemize the value of the 9802 versus the US HTS number that identifies your product. So here we have what we call the 9802 incidentals under the assembly program, whether performed before, during, or after assembly, and what is allowed. So this gives you some examples of what parts of operations usually come into play where CBP has already ruled that they're allowed.
Exactly, Myrna. This is a great slide here because it gives you an idea of what's allowed, basically. Even though my statement before of condition ready for assembly is a strong statement, they are giving you some freedom to do these types of processes. And as you can see, a lot of these processes are really processes around an item that you have received in Mexico that was already in a finished state, meaning that there was no further processing aside from these minor processing operations performed. Cleaning, removing rust, grease, paint. Some of those items, totally fine. You can do those. Applying any type of coating or painting, perfectly permissible. Trimming, filing or cutting of small amounts of excess materials, adjusting the shape or form of a component, separating by cutting or finishing of components. Final calibration that I wanted to make sure that you acknowledge is the last paragraph there, cutting material. In this case, what they're telling us is as long as you do not cut to shape, you're fine. If you only cut to length, that is permissible, and you'd still be able to claim that component as 9802 eligible, but it only has to be cut to length.
What cannot be claimed, the not incidental operations in the foreign assembly process. So this goes back into the example that Juan provided, melting, molding, cutting garments, parts according to pattern. So if you were making a t-shirt, it comes down already pre-cut, then that's an incidental, you're sewing it. But if you're cutting it to the pattern or to the shape in which it has to be, then you're out.
Yes.
Also, painting primarily intending to enhance the appearance of an article or to impart distinctive features of the characteristics, that's out. So depending on the industry you are in, it could be an incidental or not incidental.
True.
Any other operation, treatment, or process which imparts significant new characteristics or qualities to the article affected. So we provided you these two slides mostly so that you can start thinking about what types of processes would keep you in and what would keep you out.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, have a plan B. Be on standby, prepare. Still, do not throw that the issue is gone. Definitely. As you can see, a lot of what's incidental and not incidental deals with processing. Processing is movable. You can do what you're doing in the US, potentially in Mexico, and vice versa. Whatever works in order to get you that result.
What you need to have in play to support your claim. Remember, it's always about support and defend.
That's right.
And so importers and the assembler's declaration is part of the requirement. So at the time of entry, with the documentation you're providing to support your claim, the importer will have a declaration and the assembler will have a declaration. And there's templates that we can provide to you, but pretty much it substantiates who did what and that you agree that it was done.
One thing to keep that in mind, even though we're saying that it's a declaration at the time of entry, which means that you are required to do one of these per shipment, there's a process that CASAS can help you guys, go through, which basically is obtaining a waiver from customs that you don't need to present this information at the time of entry. Basically, you obtained a waiver, you're granted the waiver, and that gives you the opportunity to present the information only when they request to see it. So it greatly reduces the amount of paperwork and the processing time. So I suggest that if you want to take advantage of this program, you pursue that option.
I will say though, Juan, that usually when we do present that option, CBP wants you to defend that option.
Sure.
So you would have to be prepared with these documentation to be able to support.
That you are able to produce the documentation if requested.
Exactly.
Exactly, yes.
So another thing which is critical
Yes.
is the manufacturer's affidavits of the U.S. components.
Yeah.
And
remember, we're saying that these are components of U.S. origin, guys. So to prove that, you need MAs, or like Myrna's commenting here, a NAFTA CO is also acceptable, but signed preferably by the producer of the goods. That way, it can be treated as truly similarly like a manufacturer's affidavit, which basically indicates that the product was manufactured in the United States, establishing therefore the origin.
exactly. And there's rulings out there that allows for, in lieu of the manufacturer's affidavit, to use the NAFTA certificate of origin to substantiate the origin of the goods.
Yes.
Document the assembly process taking place abroad.
Yeah.
Be ready. Don't try to put this together when it's requested. CBP typically, if you can't produce it in a timely fashion, which is usually through a CF-28, request for information, it's within 30 days. CBP doesn't have to approve you. You can start using this now, today, tomorrow, or never apply it.
Yeah.
This is an optional program for you, your company, to take advantage of.
9802 is one of the issues that you can reconcile. My suggestion, and Myrna would agree with this, add it to your recon flagging option. You want to start flagging for recon on 9802. What that's giving you is the opportunity to come back and basically adjust the value that's reported for 9802 and now say, okay, I've got a value that's eligible, therefore I'm not dutable for this portion of value.
With that, we're going to conclude, and we would like to thank everyone for your time.
Have a great day. Any
Bye-bye.
questions, reach out to CASAS or our first well.